Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here to review Clerks 3. So, more than likely, I probably said this, like, for every Clerks movie after the first one. Um, but I remember in the first original Clerks movie, I appreciated it, uh, because of it going on and being like the voice of the voiceless kind of thing, where, they went on and they started to have a person that works at a store start to complain about a customer who is to be difficult to to be around or to deal with and whatever. And that, of course, was like an amazing thing of that film. And so I was hoping that Clerks 3 would be very similar to Clerks 1, and come to find out I didn't realize how similar it was going to be, to the point of us finding out in Clerks 3 that it seems that these two characters are to try and go on and recreate the first two Clerks films inside Clerks 3. That's the whole idea, that's the whole concept. And I was like, okay, like, that's interesting. Because, of course, not to give too much away, but Randall in this film is to have a crisis event that is to lead him into finally wanting to be a filmmaker. And so he goes on to create the first two films, and then is to spend most of this movie making these movies. And so there is a lot of emotional moments in this movie, and I was like, oh my god, like, there is just some, like, kind of moments that I was like, man, like, of course, this movie's gonna head in that direction. Because, like, the second one just kind of being this kind of fun movie, like, now we have to go on and give us, like, the Toy Story kind of way, and at some point there needs to be this, like, heartbreaking moment also. We also have a ton of cameos, again, in another Kevin Smith movie. Just a plethora of characters that drop in to be involved in this film. We have ties to movies like Yoga Hosers, which of course I've seen. We of course have some YouTube connections that of course I had seen Mark Bernardin and Ralph Garman. We also have an actor that, heaven forbid, I know the name of, that was also in the first Clerks movie, that is also in this one. And I know him from, like, of course, like, My Name is Earl and Remember the Titans, but heaven forbid I know the name. Let me know in the comments below what this actor's name is, because I'm a moron, because I didn't look it up. But so, but yeah, but we have so many ties to, like, the Kevin Smith universe of things, because we have to go on and do that. Here's the thing now, if all of this leading up to this point is all positive, now I'm going to go on and and kind of mention some negative. So, for anybody that was to go on and watch Kevin Smith's YouTube channel and know his story or his tale or whatever, you can immediately go on and see that this movie was something where Kevin Smith just kind of took from his own life and put it into this film. And to me, I was like, really? Like, so the things that seemed the most creative for this film compared to the other two honestly aren't that creative in my mind, because I'm like, well, he's just taking from his own life and putting it here, and that probably is like a nitpicky thing to go on and do, or a thing to do, because, like, a number of writers all write about their lives. And so why not? But yeah, that was like the only real negative side of this movie. Um, Beyond probably like also in the negative, I'm like, man, there is just so many like cameos that they just put in this film. That would be a negative also. It's just like, man, they just filled to the brim with all of these characters that then I'm like, really? Like you have to have like so much time being ate up by all these things. Uh but again, it's just like, well, hey, like I wanted all these people to get work. And so yeah, so I can it's a back and forth about me. But anyways, so with that said, this movie is to of course be better than Clerks 2, um, because from what I remember, I didn't really care for Clerks 2. Um, so at least Clerks 3 is better than Clerks 2. Uh, like, but really, I feel like Clerks 3 is just kind of like a one-off watching kind of thing. Simply because it's like, oh, okay, like, so you get the idea of the film, and then past that, it's like, okay, all right, well, that was nice. Like, it doesn't have rewatchability just because it's just like you need to know like the idea of the movie. So with that said, so hopefully I've gone on and kind of mentioned and got everything out of the way that I felt like I needed to. Uh, so with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers about this one. So this movie is okay at the end of the day. Um, where can you go on and see Clerks 3? Because I think it's on premium access for $14.99. I think on like Amazon or something. Um, Beyond that, you can probably go on into a number of apps that I've used over a long stretch of time, and I'm going to plop them all out here. So, excuse me. So for a Google Play Store search, or maybe you might have to go into a Google search for this one, you can go into a plethora of different apps. There, in fact, you can possibly go on and first find a app called Box UHD, and come to find out in a Google Play Store, uh, this app no longer exists on a Google Play Store, but there's another app that has the logo that says Fox HD Movies. It's the same app. Go ahead and download it, and you can watch uh, possibly Clerks 3. Right now, it's the bootleg theater version, but at some point, they'll put in the premium access version of Clerks 3, and so you can be able to see it whenever you'd like. I would probably wait for the bootleg version. The theater version that I saw was just kind of weirdly kind of camera was a little gun shy at certain points, but anyways, but I got the gist of the whole movie. So next thing, you can go on to hopefully Google search or whatever, and find an app called Yes Movies that hopefully works. Um, that at some point will probably have the premium access version of Clerks 3 also. And then lastly, you can go on to an app called Doxy, DOXCY, and hopefully be able to watch Clerks 3 for absolutely free, because it'll probably be on there also. Sure. So with that said, let's just go on into that double five time territory. Let's just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time we spoil this movie. So we go back to the original Quick Stop Grocery, and so we have Dante who ends up opening up the store, and then we have, of course, Randall who makes his way into the Quick Stop. So in the beginning of this movie, we have the guys who are playing this hockey game against the of course, the Comic Book Men guys. If you've never seen the Comic Book Men show, um, Kevin Smith had gone on to run this like comic book store, and at some point had a number of employees and so on and so forth. And so they did a whole show about that. And like a lot of times it was just kind of like people bringing stuff in to buy or sell it, and like that became the whole movie of them, like, or the whole show of them like showcasing like number ones, or kind of these unique comic books, these unique items that people were trying to hawk off for whatever reason. And a lot of times they'd have to bring like specialists in. It would be kind of like the comic book equivalent of Pawn Stars, in all honesty. No offense, but that's the best way to describe comic book men. So, so we have this hockey game, and all of a sudden we have a number of people all lining up at the front of this store, just kind of like, hey, does anybody work here? So we come to find out have both Jay and Silent Bob, who are at the front of this store, and come to find out the store that was Randall's before is to now be Jay and Silent Bob's weed store. And so we have the guys going on and selling this weed to this guy, and come to find out Jay and Silent Bob, Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith, do legitimately sell their own weed. So really, it's not a huge stretch of imagination for these characters to be selling weed in this film, because they legitimately sell it now. So we go into this film, and we have Randall and we have Dante, and we, of course, end up having Elias that comes in with his son, and it seems that he is to be part of the Christian crypto club, and he is to be like heavily to be into God, like of course he was in Clerks 2. And this guy, of course, was the same guy who worked in the fast food joint in Clerks 2. And so Elias comes into this movie, and he is to try to sell these Jesus kites. And the guys are like, hey, like, no one's going to want to buy these. Come on. And so, well, all of a sudden, Randall is talking to Elias. He all of a sudden is to start to mention that he is having trouble breathing, that he can't really catch his breath. He's like, he can breathe, but he's not really reining it in. So we finally have Randall, who falls over, and we have Dante, who is to call an ambulance. So Randall is to be taken off to this hospital, and it seems oddly, I guess, that this movie is to be set around Halloween, oddly, because we all of a sudden have this doctor that comes in who is to be a cardiologist, cardiothoracic surgeon, sure, heart surgeon, because come to find out, Randall is now having a heart attack, and it's a big one. And so we have Justin Long's character come in as this nurse, and so Justin Long is needing to shave Randall's junk because they're going to put a thing in through Randall's junk to try and help him get relief from this heart attack. And so Justin is wanting Randall to go on to like, hey, put your underwear down, and Randall's like, yeah, about that, like, you know what, like, I'm very sensitive about my weighing size, and so yeah, I don't want to go on and like have you shave down there. And so we then go on and we have Randall go off into surgery, and the guy's underwear is still on. And so we have this doctor who's upset that's like, well, hey, like, why isn't this guy's underwear off? Like, I'm gonna do surgery through his manhood, and like he doesn't have his underwear off. And so we had Justin Long come in. It's like, well, hey, like he has like a like a shaming size schlong size um, thing. And so the doctor is like, well, hey, stop messing around. And so the doctor whips down the underwear and is to do the surgery. And so we start to have Randall, who's going on and talking uh, about the Mandalorian from what he's seen. And because this guy is a Star Wars guy. So Randall starts talking about the Mandalorian, and we then have the doctor who's to say, it's like, okay, like, you need to tell me when like this is to kind of have worked. And then all of a sudden Randall's like, oh yeah, like that works. So we have Randall, who is now fine, it seems, even though his heart attack was a like widowmaker, and that there's an 80% chance that he was possibly going to live or die, or he was going to die by an 80% chance, and so on and so forth, which in all honesty is fairly similar to another person who went on and got a heart attack. Not naming names, but I'm just saying. Pretty close. Anyways, so sorry about that. So we go on to have Randall, who's coming out of his heart surgery, and so Randall is to have this epiphany that he wants to finally go on and do something with his life, because he is a guy that has watched so many movies. Like, now it's finally time for him to make one. And Dante's like, well, what movie are you gonna make? And so we finally just have Randall, who's like, well, like, we're gonna make a movie about Clerks. Like, we're gonna they're gonna do the Clerks movie, but they're ending up calling it something else instead of Clerks. They're calling it like Inconvenience, or they're calling it like The Convenience, or something along those lines. Um, and nobody really gets the title of the movie. Nobody understands it. So, and it's funny that way. So, at first, we have them like try and audition for a number of people, and it seems that they're getting auditions from Ben Affleck, who ends up playing Boston John. We have Sarah Michelle Gellar, who comes in here, Freddie Prinze Jr. We have Melissa Benoist. Knew I was gonna butcher that anyways. The girl who, of course, was to play Supergirl at and is to probably always be called Supergirl, even though she's to probably go on and do a number of things at some point. But anyways, and so we also have some Saturday Night Live guys who come in and they audition, because heaven forbid you just kind of lump them all in one kind of fell swoop of a thing. But pushing on. So, and the Impractical Joker guys come in. Joe Gatto, Sal Volcano, so on and so forth. Everything that is already on the freaking IMDb. Donald Rawlings comes in, so on and so forth. So we lay into this film and with cameos. And so after that, it feels like finally Randall and Dante then decide it's like, well, hey, like instead of going on and just hiring a bunch of actors that just don't sound right for the role, Randall's like, well, I'm gonna go on and I'm just gonna play me. And it's like, what? So come to find out, Randall is to play himself. Then all of a sudden, Dante is to play himself. And then all of a sudden, they're just like, well, like, who's gonna play Elias? Who's gonna play Jay and Silent Bob? And Randall is just like, well, like, why can't you guys just all play yourselves? And so it ends up being just like Clerks, where just a lot of people just kind of end up playing certain roles from Clerks that they were before, anyways. As well as Elias is to play this very Christian religious person, but or Elias's character, they end up like changing the name of him, and so Elias is to be upset because when Randall was to have a heart attack, he tried to pray to God to save Randall, and instead, Elias went on to say, like, no, like, I'm not going to pray to God anymore, I'm going to pray to the devil, yeah, and so all of a sudden, they end up changing the club that Elias was in to Crimson Crypto Club. So, but now Elias is upset because the guy is now to be like a religious guy, but for God instead of the devil. And we just have, of course, Randall, who's like, well, I'm not changing it. I'm going to keep it that way. So we start to tie in previous people from the previous Clerk movie. We go on to have Veronica, who ends up coming back to be upset that someone is going on and doing a movie about her life. And she's also just really upset that Randall is doing the movie of this. So Veronica shows up at this store and she's to be all mad and is to mention that she has a life and Dante doesn't. And then Veronica is to apologize and storm off because come to find out, Dante was to lose the love of his life from the last film, which of course was Becky. And I was like, wait a minute, she died in the last movie? I don't remember that at all. So, but come to find out, Becky was to die in the last film, or she was to die, and so now Dante had gone to her grave, and Becky is there, and Dante is playing all this out in his imagination, and so Dante is asking Becky, like, how is heaven like? And she's like, well, yeah, like, we just sleep with people all the time, and we of course have Dante's like, well, you're doing butt to mouth, right? And she's like, well, of course we are. And it's like, because that's a whole reference from the other movie. So she's rattling off all the celebrities she's banged all at one time, and so on and so forth. And so we of course have Becky, who's telling Dante, it's like, well, hey man, like, you should move on, and try to get past this, and so on and so forth. So now Dante is with Veronica, and so Veronica is talking about her problems with her ex-husband and her kid, and at some point, like Dante's like, "Yeah, I understand. I'm hearing you out." And it seems that we have both Veronica and Dante doing it in this car. We see the rocking back and forth, and they're like, "Well, like, I'm assuming that Veronica might be on board, but definitely Dante is." So it is also kind of funny when they are to try to figure out who Dante is really going to be in this film. How important of a character he's really going to be, because Dante is kind of upset that Dante doesn't end up being added into the film until like the 37th page. And he's like, "What the heck? Like, I should be like here on scene one. Like, I should be the key part of your film, and so why am I in here so late?" And also, there's a whole entire time where Randall wants to somehow uh, have there be like a store robbery where they shoot Dante and kill him off, which is kind of funny because of, or which is kind of odd because of how they uh, finish up this film. So we have, of course, them trying to figure out the Star Wars equivalent characters of every number of these people in this cast, but then we are to realize that Dante is really just Dax, Luke Skywalker's guy that he flies with in the X-wing, or no, in the Tie Fighter, the Luke's uh, Luke's what is the right word? Vessel, ship, whatever it's called. So heaven forbid I know Star Wars. I know about Star Wars. So, uh, but we go on, and so Dante's like, "That's all I am to you? I'm just some like nameless, faceless guy who doesn't even get his own action figure and the whole Star Wars of things." And Reynolds just like, "Well, yeah, like." So I wonder, since now that this movie is out, I wonder if Star Wars, because they have just money to blow, is just gonna put out the action figure that was to never be seen whenever they do another Star Wars film, because I'm sure there's gonna be another one probably. And they might as well just put those out anyways. So, uh, so we go on in this film, and we have Randall and we have Dante, and they're redoing all these scenes. They're putting all these things in. They're doing all these moments of this like Pringle thing where somebody can't take their hand out of the Pringle, so on and so forth. They do the whole Jay and Silent Bob dancing scene where Jay ends up getting camera shy with a bunch of people. They're all like in the scene, and we kind of have like this feeling that maybe any number of these scenes were all to be how they actually were in the Clerks movie, where we had like Jay who's like, "Hey, that guy, he's looking in the back. Hey, that guy is down there. What is he doing?" So so we go on to have them go and do all of this film, shoot all this movie, and we get to a point where they're going to recreate a Clerks 2 moment, and they're doing it in movies. And so we now have to force Dante to go back into uh, the movies where they shot the second Clerks, and Dante is like, "Yeah, I don't want to go in there, like obviously." Um, and so Dante, by the time that he is to almost go in the store, he ends up throwing off his movie outfit and he tosses it on the ground, um, because like, and also Becky is there in spirit to try to motivate Dante to just kind of do this film, but Dante instead runs off to go to the bar to get drunk. So Randall ends up going back into the quick stop to find out that uh, there is some family there in Mark Bernardin, and and we go on to find out that this family is to have a girl who is to write about this movie in her school newspaper, and that this mother is to try to like supervise what's going on here. And so luckily they're not going to shoot the scene that ties in the whole donkey shoot, because we go on and have Randall, who's to pull Dante aside into the back of here to tell him, it's like, well, hey, now we can't shoot that donkey scene because you left, and so we're gonna have to shoot it tomorrow. So we have Randall and Dante like getting this moment where they're kind of like, they're both like really arguing at one another. They're really just upset with one another. And so finally it all comes to a head when both Randall and Dante are to be having this thing of dialogue where Randall is doing this whole bit with this salsa, and we finally have Dante that is to mention that the reason why he doesn't want to go on and do any of this movie is really because he doesn't want to relive his life. That every bit of his life sucked, and that also that Dante has really given up a lot to give Randall what he wants, and now Dante is just so upset that Randall hasn't really treated Dante like he is to be like the biggest star of this movie for how much Dante has um, done for Randall and been with him through this whole journey, and so on and so forth. And a very like paraphrasing, trying to quickly get this all out of the way sense. So we all of a sudden have then Dante who falls over, and Randall's like, oh my god, like my friend. Because we end up having the doctor who mentions to Dante that if Dante is to eat the exact same like Randall does, that at some point Dante, considering his age, is probably going to have a heart attack just like his friend is going to, foreshadowing something. So we have Dante that goes on and is to go to the hospital. Dante's running in there, and Elias is to tell Randall that, hey man, like Dante had to go on and he had to make a bargain with Emma for like half of the Quick Stop store to do this movie, and he had to like fork over like a lot of money for this to do this film. And Randall then realizes that it's like, oh my god, yeah, like so Randall is to go on and say how important Dante really is to him, but Dante's going off to go into his own room and so on and so forth, and Randall ends up kind of getting kicked out. So Randall then goes on to edit the movie, because evidently everything for the most point, is to all be done. And so Randall then rushes off to have Jay and Silent Bob distract the people at the hospital while Randall goes on to uh, run to show Dante the Clerk movies, the first two. And so while this is going on, we have Dante who is watching the movie, and come to find out, Dante passes away during the watching of this movie, and so we just kind of see him supposedly in this movie theater in heaven next to Becky, and we have Dante that's going on and saying like, well, like, uh, like I think I'm gonna leave, and Becky's like, well, you're not gonna watch the rest of the film, and he's like, no, I trust the filmmaker, and so Dante ends up leaving with Becky to go into heaven, and so I was like, wow, that's so great, and so now by the end of this, we have both Randall and we have Elias that are in the Quick Stop store, and we have Emma who's all ticked off because she's like, well, hey, where's my $30,000? I went on to invest in this movie. Now Dante is dead. And so now that I'm not dealing with Dante, I'm having to deal with you. So where's my money? And all of a sudden we have Randall, who is to have like Elias or his son just kind of rush in, and they end up going on to state that these kites have made like $1 million. These kites weirdly just made this $1 million thing, and so now we have Elias and his son who's just kind of throwing money around, and we have Elias who buys half of the Quick Stop from Emma, and so we have Jay and Silent Bob that come into the store, and they are to ask like, hey man, where are those kites that are on those YouTube videos that are blowing up? So they grab the kite and they start flying these kites around the store, and so we of course have Blockchain Coltrane, who is to have $1 million and needs to throw $1 million at Jay and Silent Bob, and they're saying like, yeah, you're gonna get high as fuck. Yeah. We also had both Jay and Silent Bob like smoking this massive thing of weed, this huge joint, which you see them in the early part of the movie, like them assembling this massive joint, which I thought was funny. So we have this movie finish up with, of course, Randall going on and saying that he like really wanted Dante there, and all of a sudden Dante shows up, but he's not really there. But that's how they kind of end this movie, with the spirit of Dante just being there, which I'm kind of curious if that's how they're gonna go with possibly like, are they gonna do like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 route where like Dante keeps coming back as this like spirit, or maybe they're gonna figure out some way to just have him just come back and just be like, hey man, I thought you were dead. Well, yeah, but sequel though. And it's like, oh, okay, like they're gonna pull like the scary movie thing, because that could be a route that they could go into and just kind of forget that he died, just to be like a whole like whoa kind of moment if they ever do Clerks 4. But either way, at the end of the day, I think it's about that time to just go on and get out of here. I'm sorry about all the pauses. There was a bunch of things going on that I decided I was like, okay, pause here, pause there, whatever. So with that said, I think I'm going to try and just quickly get out of here. Let me know how you felt about Clerks 3 in the comments below. Let me know how you felt about this movie, whether you liked it, whether you hated it, whether you felt indifferent about it. Hopefully I went on and said a bulk of what happens in this film. There was some stuff that I just tried to rush through, but hopefully there wasn't too many things that I completely forgot about. But there's a whole lot of like moments in this film that I just kind of wanted to just rush through. Like there was a whole scene where Dante and Randall were in their car and were to have this line of dialogue about Randall knowing a family member who broke his neck trying to suck his own dick. And we have Jay's like, oh my god, like did that really happen? And they are like, Jay, like we're doing a whole scene here. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, mother. Like we also had some funny moments where Jay was trying to do these lines, but he was doing it in a non-conventional manner, which I thought was also kind of funny. Where Jay was going on to like, where he was like complimenting like Silent Bob, but again he was doing it in this like kind of like old-fashioned kind of voice, kind of a way, which I thought was funny. But we also at the end of this movie, we had um, Harley Quinn Smith. She was at Dante's funeral as we had Elias who was delivering this whole thieves thing that he ended up saying at another portion of this movie, and we also had Randall that instead of finally not quoting a Star Wars thing, uh, with "This is the way" and "May the Force be with you," instead he goes on and is to quote a Departed movie. So, but we also had Harley Quinn Smith also at the end of the movie, and she's kind of sorting out all these milk cartons. Like, of course, she did in Yoga Hosers, and she has the same outfit that she wore in Yoga Hosers, which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, so with that said, and I think and supposedly the IMDb, she is to go on and be like the new employee for Quick Stop. So that'll be interesting to see if they ever are to like intertwine or tie things into whatever for the Kevin Smith universe of things. But otherwise, I think I'm going to just finally get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Oh, uh, I think we're good enough. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.